deals the relationship, the individual, the society. When is ruled by others, sorrow follows. Say which one is worse. But there is no need to choose between the two because a choice is impossible. Chuang-Tzu is saying, the boat can very well function on its own. And sometimes the boat will meet accidents. If there is no boatman, is there somebody to be hurt? The empty boat is the reality. When there is nothing, who's there to be targeted? Therefore, nobody will seek to hurt you. When Chuang-Tzu says, the straight tree is the first to be chopped down, what he means is, one comes to the wise ones, to wisdom literature, not to learn something new, but to drop the so-called truths one has been happily carrying and unconsciously suffering from. It is not the falseness of the self or the world that makes us suffer. We suffer because of the so-called truths that we carry. So how many times have we, for example, heard of the truism, axiom, that the straight trees are the first to be cut down, therefore one must not be straight and simple. Have we heard of it? No? सीधा पेड़ ही पहले कटता है. Have we not heard of it? How many of us know of this? Oh, thanks. Right? And then there are just so many idioms, popular metaphors, indicating the importance of being a little clever, almost cunning with the society. If you are too simple, too straight, too innocent, you have had it. So you better be a little deft, a little clever, a little smart with the world. Right? We have heard of all these things. Now, wisdom literature is there to challenge what we know of. To take the sheen off our smartness. The verse by Chuangzu today deals with the relationship between the individual and the society, the relationship between the self, the ego, and the contents of the mind. We'll try to go deep into it. When one rules others, confusion follows. When is ruled by others, sorrow follows. Can't say which one is worse. But there is no need to choose between the two because a choice is impossible. A choice is impractical, impossible. Why? Because you can't have just one of the two. So there is no question of choice. If you rule others, you would be ruled by others. Therefore, in Chuangzu's words, confusion and sorrow would be concurrent. No choice here, both will be simultaneously experienced. Though obviously most people do not want to be ruled, they would rather rule over others. The relationship is always dualistic, always. The ego does not see that because the ego thrives in duality. So the ego thinks it can have one-way exploitation. I can exploit others and be benefited. I can enslave others and enjoy. What it does not see is that to enslave is to be enslaved. That the so-called master is the slave. The relationship is not just dualistic, it is reciprocal. What you do to the other, the relationship you strike with the other, is the relationship you have allowed the other to impose on you. Though it might not be immediately visible. One can entertain himself for long in the thought that one is the ruler, the master, the commander, the controller. You see, the ego derives its identity from its objects. Right? And even if you relate to an object to control it, you're still basing your identity on it. It doesn't matter the name you give to the relationship. The relationship is always one of dependency. Because in absence of self-knowledge, there is no way to independently define oneself. No way. The only way then to make some sense of who one is by basing one's definition on the objects one is related to. That is the only way to have any meaningful sense of the self. Who am I? I am the holder of this pen. So I am a writer. If this pen and the paper and the publication don't exist, I am a void. My identity is a vacuum. So there has to be an object to have a relationship with. And that object provides me my name, my self, my worth, my identity, my very existence. It comes from the object. Right? So, who am I? I am somebody who holds, for example, there's nothing on this, but there should be something on this. But let's say there is something on this. Who am I? I'm somebody who holds this. The moment I hold this gives me existence, right? I hold this. This gives me existence. Now I exist. Flip the relationship. I'm held by this. I'm held by this. The same thing still happens. This gives me existence. Though the relationship appears inverted now, from the holder to the held, I hold this versus I am held by this. It appears that it's an opposite relationship. However, it is not opposite in the existential sense, because in either case, it is this object that lends me my existence. Do you see this? I'm taller than this. I'm shorter than this. In either case, who am I? Somebody dependent on this. Though the name of the relationship has flipped. I'm taller than this, I'm shorter than this. Who am I without this? Nobody. Nobody. Do you see? So, irrespective of the name of the relationship, my existence comes from the objects in my life, unfortunately. Hence, I'm dependent on them. It doesn't matter what the relationship is like. I control this, I'm controlled by this. I hate this, I like this. The relationship can take varied names. But irrespective of the name, I am dependent on this. I am dependent on this. Therefore, I am a slave. Therefore, I am a slave, even if in the specific context of the relationship, I appear to be the master. I might say, I own this. I might say, I own this. Still, you are a slave. Because without this, you are nobody. Without this, you are nobody. And obviously, if you say this owns you, then you are even more clearly a slave. And this slavery is much deeper than the slavery your object can experience. Because the object is at most physically owned. But if my identity itself comes from the object, then I am existentially owned. I own my objects at most physically. But my objects own me existentially. So the bondage, the slavery is deeper. Do we understand this? And that's why, irrespective of the name of the relationship, identity depending on object is to be seen through and hence avoided. Doesn't matter what the name of the relationship is. Therefore, Chuangzu is taking both the names to task. When one rules others, confusion follows. So this option is discounted. When one is ruled by others, sorrow follows. Again discounted, because names can mislead. When bondage appears as bondage, one wants to rebel. But when bondage takes the name of freedom, one happily succumbs. So Chuangzu is saying, no. Doesn't matter what the name is. The fact is, the presence of the object in the mind indicates dependency. That object could be a friend, a foe, doesn't matter. If it is present in the mind, there is dependency. The object could be a thing of virtue, a thing of vice, accumulation or renunciation. If it's present in the mind, you are dependent. Who am I? Who am I? An accumulator, an achiever. Who am I? A renunciate. There has to be something to renounce, right? If there is nothing to renounce, who are you? There has to be something to achieve. If there's nothing to achieve, who are you? So irrespective of all your achievements, you are still a little slave of the things you think you won, you think you achieved. I won something only to be enslaved by it. How smart does that sound? So that's the difference between wisdom and smartness. From the center of wisdom, you look at all smartness as stupidity. In fact, the smarter one is, probably the more deeply stupid he is, when seen from the center of wisdom. Are we together till this point? Right. The wise, therefore, choose neither. They neither influence nor are influenced. The problem is that influence will have an object. And to be influenced also requires an object you value, hold in esteem, admire, respect. So there is something, somebody dominating the mind space and determining your identity. And that's a problem, because that will very successfully prevent you from looking at yourself. One looks at oneself only when there is a question, only when there is a doubt, only when one does not know. The presence of an important object in mind, in life, takes away the question of identity. I don't need to know who I am, because I am a Brahmin. I don't need to know who I am because I am a devotee or I am a mother. The question is well and truly settled. Who am I? A successful entrepreneur. So Is there a need for self-inquiry? No. Who am I? A responsible father. A recipe for internal blindness. I already know who I am, therefore there is no space for the question, who am I? And whatever I know of myself comes from an object, right? I'm a father because of an object. I'm wealthy because of an object. Devoted wife because there is an object. And that object is so cleanly substituting for self-knowledge. And that would imply suffering. But suffering can be revelatory. Therefore, suffering is suppressed and not acknowledged. If you ask most people, are you suffering? They are unlikely to admit. They'll say, yes, there is sometimes a little bit of friction, tension, the usual wear and tear of life, the usual pull and push. But suffering is too heavy a word. No, I'm not really suffering. Yeah, a little stressed this evening, that's fine. Because if you acknowledge suffering, you have acknowledged that the very foundation of life is shaky, weak, misplaced. So suffering is not acknowledged, and when it boils over, then one leans on entertainment and such things. Suppression of suffering. Distraction instead of admission. Why should one acknowledge what the 5 days of the week were truly like? Simply binge on the weekend. Are you getting it? That will mitigate the suffering to an extent and help successfully protect the object in the life. Because the object is habit, the object is comfort, the object is inertia, the object is convenience, the object is fear, the object is greed. You see this? It is not that you are suffering because you are dominated. If you look at a person or a community exploited by time, and you ask them, what do you want? And if they're honest, they'll say, we want to switch side. We want to be the exploiter. And the belief is, by switching sides, there would be freedom from suffering. Right? The experience of suffering is there, but the cause is being falsely attributed. We think that an object dominating us is causing suffering, and the highlighted word is dominating. I suffer because object X, I suffer because X is dominating me. Right? And what do you highlight there? Dominating me. And what is highlighted is sought to be changed. So I say, I won't suffer when I would dominate X. What's remained unchanged? X. And the tendency of I to depend on X, Y, or Z. That's remained unchanged, and therefore suffering too will remain unchanged. They assaulted us. They ruled us. They looted us. So, revenge. There has to be a role reversal. Now we'll turn the tables on them. We'll show them who we are. Yes, you suffered when you were attacked, but you will suffer equally when you become the attacker. And this time the suffering will be deeper and difficult to decipher. Somebody attacks you and you suffer. It's comprehensible. But the suffering that comes from achievement, from occupation, from attainment of an object, that suffering is unspeakable and incomprehensible. How do you explain it? It's weird. I didn't have X, so I suffered. And I could explain that away. There is a lack, therefore I suffer. But how do you explain the continuation, rather the amplification of suffering on attaining X? On missing it, you suffer. That's fine. On attaining it, if you still suffer, what do you do with it? Then there is self-deception and distraction. Then you want to tell yourself, I'm fine. Because this seems theoretically impossible. I have it, and I still suffer. Since this is theoretically impossible, therefore, I must rename my experience. It's almost like an experimenter, a scientist, fudging the observations because they don't tally with the theory. Does that not happen? These observations, don't quite add up. They seem to be violating the theory. So what do? I tamper. And that's what we internally do. I'm supposed to be happy because I have achieved. I have achieved, I'm supposed to be happy. So I declare myself happy. Not because I am happy, but because I am supposed to be happy. It would appear quite stupid. You didn't have this, you suffered, now you have this, and you still put up a sorry face and say, I'm still suffering. It would look so stupid. So I would rather say, no, I achieved this and I am happy. See this? Freedom from confusion and grief comes by living with Tao in inner emptiness. There is redundancy here. Living with Tao in inner emptiness. One could simply say living with Tao, or one could say living in inner emptiness. What does living in inner emptiness means? The mind does not need to be full. The mind can be empty because the self is fulfilled. The mind is the space around the self.
The mind is the space around the ego that the ego fills up with umpteen objects just to feel secure, just to have a name, an identity, an existence. That's what mind is. Emptiness of mind and fullness of self go together. The more empty the self is, the more cluttered the mind would be. And the more complete one is in himself, the more empty would be the mind. Freedom from confusion and grief comes by living in Tao, in inner emptiness. Confusion was related to ruling others. Grief was related to being ruled by others. Both indicating presence of object. Both indicating a cluttered mind. And a cluttered mind becomes unavoidable when one is incomplete within. What else will you do? One feels a constant loneliness. A hurtful void. So one will have to fill it up with something, and nothing really works. So something turns into everything. And that's what the clutter is. Everything. Because one has to try everything. One has to try everything because nothing in particular seems to work. That's the clutter. That clutter can never stop at anything. Just that due to physical limitations, the new thing will seem to elbow out, crowd out some pre-existing thing. That's all. Nothing would be really dropped. Just that its memory might start fading. Everything would remain present because nothing in particular seems to end it all. Nothing in particular seems to satisfy to the fullest. Therefore, one has to keep everything stored. Are you getting it? If you're crossing a river and an empty boat drifts into yours, even an angry man will not shout. But if he sees someone inside the boat, he will yell again and again and curse louder each time, all because he believes there is someone there. This someone is the object that we carry. Right? The mind has to be the empty boat. The stream is life itself. Let there be no boatman. The self, the ego, is the boatman. Or you could say the boatman is so contented, he is lying asleep. Lying asleep, he has become invisible. He is not rowing. Lying asleep. The message is clear. You don't need to be present. Your system is not yours. Your system belongs to the river. Your system arises from the river. Your system is the river itself. And therefore, the river knows very well how to take care of your system. Seen those giant water lily leaves? This big. They look almost like containers because their edges are perpendicular to the water. Flat leaf with perpendicular edges. Large ones. That arises from the water and dissolves in the water. Everything about the person comes from the stream of life. The body, the brain, the entire apparatus. The senses know their job. The eyes know how to gather information. The legs know how to walk to the destination. The hands know how to pick up. The brain knows how to process information, how to integrate it with memory, how to come to conclusion. What is the exact role of the ego then? If the stream knows the boat, what is the boatman for? Think of any situation in day-to-day life where the ego is really needed for the person, the organism, to healthily function. Can we come up with even one instance when the ego self is really needed? Why can't the person, this jeev, why can't the person just work as has been designed by Prakriti? Even if the ego claims credit or doership, de facto everything is done by the apparatus provided by the soil. No? Show me one thing that the ego can do on its own. Ultimately, everything is done by the apparatus itself, the embodied person, the human being. Why does the ego, the boatman, even need to be present? Chuangzu is saying, the boat can very well function on its own. And sometimes the boat will meet accidents. Sometimes there might be somebody who might want to abuse the boat. But who's the one receiving the abuse? Who's the one going to be potentially hurt? The boatman. If there is no boatman, is there somebody to be hurt? Only the ego gets hurt. Only the ego gets hurt. And the boatman, if he is present, does not require somebody to be yelling abuses. He can get hurt for no reason at all. The boatman had expectations from the wind. Right? Sailors have masts and therefore expectations from winds. And the expectations were belied. So the boatman is hurt. Now there is nobody really abusing the boatman and he is still hurt. He is hurt because he exists. If the boatman exists, he would suffer. The boatman is totally needless. The river is the boat, and the river and the boat being one need nobody outside of them to take care of the river or the boat or anything else, whatever. The boatman can only spoil things for everybody. The maximum contribution he can provide is zero. Practically, his contribution would always be negative. And for the contribution to be maximum at zero, he will have to be reduced to zero. There is no practical gainful utility of the ego self in the life of this so-called individual. This individual can function very beautifully, very smoothly without the boatman. As I speak and you listen, do you need the ego? Isn't the process joyfully smooth in the absence of the listener? So there are words and there is listening, but does that necessitate a listener? Please tell me. You look at yourself, is a listener really present? And if the listener is present, isn't he hampering the listening? Because the ego is a mass of beliefs. The first belief is I am and I am incomplete. Won't those beliefs interfere with the listening? Please tell me. If there is a listener, won't he impede listening? The boatman is not needed. The session is a stream. And the boat will sail very well without any kind of master, rower, controller, boatman. When you look at something as somebody, you miss the seeing. When you listen to something as somebody, you miss listening. The ego is not just unnecessary, it is obstructive. It is a presence that the person can do very well without. But the ego's craft lies in making itself feel important. If I am not there, how will the person function? Because I am the doer. No, all doership is false. And if you are indeed the doer, you are spoiling the deed. If you are indeed the doer, then you are reducing something from the quality of the deed. The greatest doing happens in absence of the doer. Do we see this? The empty boat is not something to be afraid of. The empty boat is the reality. The boatman is an apparition, some kind of a phantom. A ghost. The boat is anyway all on its own in the stream. The boatman really doesn't even exist. But with his fake existence, he destroys the boat and its journey. If you can empty your own boat while crossing the river of life, no one will oppose you, no one will seek to harm you. No one will oppose you. The highlighted word is you. No one will oppose you because you won't exist to be opposed. They would be hurling abuses at empty space. Who's there to receive the abuse? Therefore, you won't be hurt. No one will seek to harm you. If it is known that you don't exist, why will somebody shoot at you? Right? To be punched, first of all, you must be something of a punching bag. Nobody seriously punches at air. Seen people do that? But when there is something, it can be targeted. When there is nothing, who's there to be targeted? Therefore, nobody will seek to hurt you. Right? If there is a wall, a bullet will create a hole. If there is empty space, the bullet will simply pass through. There exists nobody to be hurt. The more you make it apparent that you are vulnerable, the more you will be arm twisted. The more you will be blackmailed through hurt. Right? They will know there exists somebody who can be hurt using this and that means. And the world is as unfulfilled as we are. So it seeks to extract whatever possible from whoever possible. If you are vulnerable, you will be exploited. If you can be hurt, you will be attacked. If it's known that there is nobody to be hurt, that there is nobody to be receiving the hurt, The straight tree is the first to be chopped down. The pure spring is the first to be drained. Those eager to display their wisdom only invite calamity. Now, this is not some worldly advice against being innocent or straight or simple or pure. This is not that. So that's the way it's been generally presented. Right? That if you are a crooked tree, you'll be spared because you are crooked. Whereas if you are gentle, simple, straight, then the world will hack you down. Learn cunningness. Be shrewd. That's how it's misinterpreted, and the misinterpretation flows down the generations. And that's what we call as received wisdom. Pop culture. Oh, he is too simple to succeed. Good guys finish last. That's not what is being said. When Chuangzu says the straight tree is the first to be chopped down, what he means is that in nature, straight trees just don't exist. Have you seen straight lines in nature? Do they exist? In nature, straight lines don't exist. They exist only in our geometry. But straight lines look impressive, clean, don't they? Therefore, to impress the objects in our life, we become something that we are not. It's like the straight tree pompously declaring in the forest, look at me. Am I not straight? Am I not gloriously straight? Look at me. How tall have I grown? Look at me. And why is that done? Because there is an object to please. Because there is an object to be impressed. Because there is a medal to be had. A reputation to be won. Do you see this? You do this and you become socially somebody and therefore socially useful, and you will be exploited because now you are now useful. Because you are now useful. Since you are something now in the eyes of others, the others will pile upon you. And that will mean your destruction. Do you get this? This is useful, is it not? This is useful. And I'm holding this. Let's say it's a human being. Let's say it's conscious, sentient. I'm holding it. It's useful. It's very useful. I say I love it. Obviously, for its utility. What else do we love people for? Because they are useful. Now it says, I want to take a stroll, or I want to fly away. Will I allow this? The moment you are useful, you are enslaved. In fact, I'll clutch it harder. On the other hand, if it becomes useless, freedom. Freedom. But being useful comes with returns, does it not? The more useful you are, the higher is the salary, the higher is the respect you command from others because you are useful. What you don't see is that the deeper is the so-called adulation or respect or compensation or whatever you get from others, the stronger is the grip they will have on you. Why will you ever let somebody useful slip away? Please tell me. But being socially useful, we repeat, comes with benefits. And you want to be socially useful because there is no self-knowledge. You can know yourself only through others. You want to have the admiration of this object, this object, this object. So you aspire to become useful, respected, paid, liked. See what lack of self-knowledge leads to. I don't know myself, therefore I'll define myself with respect to an object. To continue having a relationship with that object, I'll have to be useful to that object. And if I'm useful to that object will enslave me. If this were a piece of naturally existing mineral, would I still grip it so strongly? Would I? No. But now it has turned itself into something socially desirable. And that is the end of its freedom. This is aluminium ore, this is iron ore, this is some random polymer, and all of that is soil. Who wants to carry soil in the pocket? Nobody. But the moment the soil becomes the pen for the sake of social validation, the soil occupies a place of pride here, near the chest. See? And this pen then thinks it is worth something. Soil is under the feet, and here I am, up at the chest. I am somebody. What it doesn't recognize is that the soil is free and you are not. By becoming somebody, you gave away your freedom. And you became that somebody just to please your masters. Because your self-worth is not yours, right? When you say, I have become somebody, that somebodyness is necessarily socially ratified. You won't say you are somebody if nobody else says the same. Right? And that's why we need so much social proof. To have self-esteem, I require a job others value as well. Or a medal or an award or a degree. All of these are social institutions, are they not? If you have a degree that nobody recognizes, Would you be happy? If you carry a currency nobody accepts, would you be happy? So the happiness comes from others' acceptance of the currency you carry. And it's not the degree that you are proud of. You are proud of the fact that others recognize your degree. So all of that is just social dependence. And the moment you are dependent on somebody, you'll have to please that person, right? If I'm dependent on someone, as a quid pro quo, I'll have to please that person. The moment you please someone, game over. So don't be the artificially best tree in the jungle. The well-behaved, well-groomed one. The one at perfect right angle to the ground. The river never flows in straight lines, does it? Never. It sometimes talks to that side and sometimes whispers to this side. And there is always a bit of experimentation and therefore zigzag movement. And that's how naturally life is. You could say, the river is being wasteful. It has flown this way and needlessly wasted time and energy. It could have rather taken a straight line. And that's what Chuangzu is warning against. Don't be so smart, don't be so clever. Allow yourself to be wasteful by social standards. Allow yourself to be a loser by social standards. Those too eager to display their wisdom only invite calamity. If you have wisdom, you won't be eager to impress on others that you are wise. If you are really wise, you won't be afraid of being a little stupid, at least occasionally. But when you are seeking to impress others with your wisdom, you will be flawlessly wise. And the moment you come across somebody flawlessly wise, like the straight tree, you must know the fellow is inviting calamity for himself because he is not really wise. If there is wisdom, it would always appear flawed. Flawless wisdom is socially sanctioned wisdom. Right? If you are flawlessly wise, then through your conduct, you are conforming to the social image of wisdom. How else will you be known as flawless? Please tell me. How else will you be known as flawless? So the society has an image of perfect wisdom, right? This is how the perfectly wise man looks. The society has that image. And the society declares you perfectly wise. What does that imply? The society does not really know wisdom. What does it have? It has an image of what perfect wisdom or high wisdom looks like, right? And society declares you too wise or perfectly wise, deeply wise. What does that mean? That you have tailored your conduct to meet the social image of wisdom. Have you not? The society already knows or has declared, if you behave in such and such way, if you look in such and such way, then you will be called wise. And the only way then you can be called wise is by copying the social standard of wisdom. And when you are doing that, obviously you are being stupid. That is not wisdom at all. Would real wisdom ever be reproducible, replicable? Is it possible? Therefore, real wisdom would always look like a bit of stupidity to others. Always. Therefore, the really wise one would at least sometimes be found doing things that are considered stupid or unwise. Whereas the pretender, the hypocrite, would always be found doing things that look perfectly wise. Allow yourself a little stupidity. That's all right. There is no need to be always conform to the image of perfection. Because nobody knows perfection. All that we have is images of it. And aligning your conduct with those images is not wisdom at all. It's a burden. The wise one should move like this, the wise one should speak like this, the wise one should eat like this or sleep like this, live like this, die like this, eat like this, marry like this. And if you do all those things, they'll consider you wise. And that would be a calamity. Because social wisdom is just caricature of wisdom. Pop wisdom is stupidity. So instead of being socially considered wise, allow yourself to be considered stupid, and that might have more wisdom. If you think of it, a really wise person, very unlikely to be considered wise by the society, because he would never fit their standards of wisdom. The society does not know wisdom, it knows images and standards. And why would the really wise one be bothered to meet any social standards? And therefore he would be considered either stupid or at least partially unwise. If the society tries to be generous, they'll say, yeah, sometimes he is wise, sometimes he is unwise. Or if his wisdom proves hurtful to the society, they'll declare him outrightly stupid. Getting this? Make peace with appearing stupid. Drop the burden of always appearing wise. There is good fun in playing the idiot, at least sometimes. The one who cannot afford to be an idiot, how will he afford to be wise? Let your idiocy have as much depth as your wisdom. Be as unrestrained in your idiocy as you are in your wisdom. Who am I? A free idiot. Freely idiotic. Because even before wisdom, my nature is freedom. Wisdom comes later, freedom comes first. And therefore, I am free even to be an idiot. Depends. I am also free to be wise. But if I am always wise, that's a clear indicator of lack of freedom. Be cautious if the ones you call as wise never appear stupid. Or if they get annoyed on being caught in their stupid moments. Or if you get to catch their stupidity, they start denying it. Worse still, they get hurt and become offensive. That simply then reveals a lot of inner compulsion to appear wise at any cost, always. So then, for such a person, it's nightmarish to be caught in a moment of, in a wave of stupidity. This fellow will feel exposed and betrayed and ashamed. And therefore might react with denial or even violence. Are you somebody who can't laugh at himself? Are you always the epitome of wisdom? If you are someone who never makes a mistake, then you are mistaken. If you are someone who can't see himself as something of a joke, then existence laughs at you. If you are someone who can't even pretend to be a buffoon, then you have a huge problem. Think of the wise and respectable figures in your life, at home, in society, at your office. Think of some of those, especially the aged, experienced, and the grey ones. Think of them. And imagine offering them the role of an idiot. A joker. In some little skit or play. And if they deny, they say, no, 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 give me a role that matches my gravitas. Even on the stage, I must be respectable. How do I play the idiot on the stage? If you have someone in your life, then you know what we are talking of. This fellow is just too obsessed with looking wise and respectable all the time. Even in a skit, even for the sake of acting, this person cannot afford to appear unwise. He is carrying a very, very heavy burden of pretense. He cannot drop it. He cannot be seen dancing freely, for example. All his reputation and respectability would evaporate. But what kind of respectability is this that cannot survive like 2 minutes of salsa? But that's the way it is for a lot of people. They must be long-faced and serious and godlike all the time. Even their jokes are so wise. And you tell them some dirty joke, they'll pretend not to understand. What is it about? I mean, did it relate to Aristotle? Hmm? Because you're so wise, you're not supposed to comprehend, silly, dirty jokes, let alone laugh at them. If you are found laughing at dirty jokes, what will remain of your social wisdom? The one who cannot afford to be silly and stupid is living a really miserable life. Hmm? Not only should you be a little silly and stupid, you must allow yourself to be fully stupid. And then you will also have the inner sanction to be fully wise. You get this? The problem is not that we are stupid. The problem is that we are always half stupid. And half stupid remains half stupid. Fully stupid may become fully wise. There is so much pressure. There is a reputation to be defended. One cannot afford to be stupid beyond a point, right? And that means even if one does not understand anything, one still keeps nodding. One has to look wise, you see. Obviously. Well said. Even when one wants to admit his stupidity, it has to be done with smartness, no? Clever stupidity. So, like the session ends, and then somebody gets up and says, "Yes, sir, here is a stupid question to you." No, sir. Being stupid is beyond you. Being stupid is not for the miserable ones. Being stupid is not for those who carry the compulsion to look smart. Being stupid is not for slaves. Only the free one can afford to be stupid, and you are not free. The truly wise man is content in his ordinariness. He achieves nothing, he claims nothing, he judges no one, and no one judges him. He flows quietly like Tao itself, invisible, unresisting, and free. His boat is empty. Getting this? Trying to appear special or extraordinary is always a social compulsion. Because you are never just extraordinary. You are always extraordinary in somebody's eyes. Is that not so? Are you extraordinary if no one calls you extraordinary? Are you extraordinary? No. So all extraordinariness is a bargaining chip for social transactions. I'm extraordinary, therefore I demand a salary hike. I'm extraordinary, therefore will you marry me? What else is extraordinariness for? Please tell me. It's a social thing. A social thing carrying a price tag, an economic value. It's a very material thing. Those who are free of others, those whose mind is free of objects, are also free of the burden to be special, the compulsion to be extraordinary. They are who they are. Why do I need to be bigger or better than the other? I need to be bigger only if bigger fetches a bigger prize. If smaller fetches a bigger prize, I'll want to be smaller. But bigger or smaller, I remain on sale, don't I? Don't be available to be sold. You are not a social commodity. But if you exist as the ego, as the boatman, you'd always be up for sale. The ego is never complete in itself. Therefore, it is always in the transaction mode. It is a perpetual trader. Give and take, give and take, give and take. Relate to me. I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. I'll give you this much, you give me this much. And in every transaction, the ego thinks it's being smart enough to dupe the other. The problem is the other thinks the same. In any transaction, both the parties think they are the smarter one. Therefore, there is a necessary conflict. Because you are not entering any transaction out of your fullness or out of real love. You are entering so that you can have more than you give. And the same thing is being done by the other party. So there would be conflict and violence. Both are thinking they are outsmarting the other. The fact is, both are just outstupiding the other. Do you get this? The very attempt to be special, to be extraordinary, to be better than the other, brings the other in as your master. I am extraordinary for the other. I am better than the other. So all my endeavors are with respect to the other. And if I beat the other, and that is acknowledged by nobody, how do I feel? Which means beating the other or bettering the other was never sufficient and never the target. The target always was social applause. Which also means that if you can get that social applause or certification without bettering the other, you would not bother to do anything at all. If you are a student, right? And you are to be given a certificate confirming that you have topped the class, and that's determined in advance, why would you bother to study? Because the entire quest to be extraordinary was for the sake of that certificate. If the certificate is obtained, Having obtained the certificate, if you discover nobody values the certificate, what happens? Internal crash. This degree is worth nothing. I'll burn it at the square. Seen that? This fellow is very disrespectful of the 3 or 4 or 10 years he spent obtaining that degree. What he's saying is, there is no value I assign to that period. The worth of the degree lies only in what it can fetch me from the social market. And if it fails to fetch me something from the social market, this degree is useless. That's what we call as being extraordinary. You dress up, and you look gorgeous, you look fabulous, supremely special for the party. Right? And nobody gives 2 hoots. What do? You return stamping your feet and feel like burning away that dress. Right? Because it was all for the other. And you find yourself constantly looking into others' eyes and begging recognition. Can you please just utter sexy for me? I put so much into this dress and the makeup. And can you give me at least a little ROI? This constant urge to be somebody, to be special, reveals inner bondages, which in turn come from lack of self-knowledge.
Pranam Guruji. So you were talking about the metaphor of boatman and emptiness and how the boat has to be empty. So the first question is, if there is no boatman, who is actually there to, what is the concept of love that is there?
What is the concept of?
Love. Who will love? And number 2 is, if the boat is empty, the poem is actually saying you will not suffer. What does that you mean? You are saying you does not exist, right? So why is that word you will not suffer exist? You exist.
Okay, one by one. First thing you said, if there is nobody who will love. What is love? Something done by the ego.
That's what that was my understanding till now. So that's why I'm asking.
No, that's not love.
Okay. So what is love, if I may ask?
Gita participant, are you?
I have just started.
You'll learn.
But still in the poem, the word you exist.
The word?
You exist.
Yeah.
So why does it exist?
It exists because the one being spoken to thinks of himself as existent.
Okay. Understood.
Right? If the boat is really empty, no one will exclaim you to the boat because there is nobody there to be referred to as you.
Okay, understood.
Your boat is not empty. The boatman is there. Therefore, Chuangzu is speaking to you. Had there been an empty boat, Chuangzu won't have spoken.
Understood.
Chuangzu is speaking of the empty boat to the boatman. When the boat is really empty, when the boatman really disappears, this poem too disappears. This poem is for the boatman, therefore exists only as long as the boatman is there. And when it comes to you and me, the boatman does exist. Therefore, the poem does have utility.
Okay. So when suffering does not exist, you also do not exist.
The ego is the sufferer.
Yes.
and then no instruction or teaching exists. Right? It's almost like saying, when the patient does not exist, does the medicine exist anymore?
So why this question? Because this almost looked like renunciation of all wealth, material wealth that you're having, and
Who's there to renounce?
no, I thought actually the person was the poet was actually talking to us as a normal person, and then we have to renounce all our wealth and try to become
If
free
you
of it.
have to renounce this or that, if the boatman is renouncing this or that, then the boatman is still present.
Okay.
That's the difference between pop wisdom and the real deal. Pop wisdom will talk of objects. Renounce this object, hold this object as sacred, worship that object. That's what pop wisdom or pop spirituality are, that's what they are about, right?
Yes. Yes.
They keep talking of objects. That direction is sacred. Visit that place. Keep such a thing at your home. On that particular day, do not consume that object. That's what pop wisdom is about.
Okay. Last question. Does stupidity not mean falseness, and we have to be away from falseness? Is the point of spirituality, right?
No, stupidity in the context of this verse means a refusal to act wise as per social standards.
Okay. Okay.
This is what you think of as wisdom. I refuse to abide by that. So in your eyes, I look stupid and I'm okay with that.
Okay. Thanks, Guruji.